In the beginning, let's keep it simple. Let's keep it understandable. And one of the mantras of Qvinci is financial insights everyone can understand. Let's keep this simple. And we build. But if you overdo it in the beginning, you overwhelm small business owners. I mean, we're not dealing with Wall Street financiers. We're dealing with small business owners.
Far beyond franchise fees, as a franchisor, everything's about unit level economics. How your franchisees perform, their profitability, their growth, whether they open up multiple locations or multiple stores. Your mission as a franchisor, it's to make your franchisees profitable. But why do so many franchisors struggle? They don't have the right data. They don't have the right metrics. They're not leveraging the advantage of their franchise system when it comes to coaching and training franchisees on what it takes to be successful. And today we're going to speak with Brad Adams, president of Qvinci. We're going to talk about best practices for unit level economics, recording data, coaching franchisees, and growing your franchise system. Brad, welcome. We're going to have a fun conversation today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Charles. I went to the Fran camp with you guys last year and thought it was a great event, and I look forward to the next one in Chicago.
Well, you know what, Brad, and I appreciate that, and I also appreciate you guys supporting our clients and what you're doing at Qvinci. And before we even started on this video, you were so passionate. I said, Brad, we got to hold up here. I said, I want to start the video because we were talking about, I had asked, I said, Brad, and maybe we could just start off with this question because I said for Qvinci, right, it's a data company and you're helping franchisors achieve unit economic goals. But the question I had asked, and I loved where you were taking this, is what is the philosophical or what's the philosophical problem that you're solving for franchisors or you're helping them unlock?
Well, I'm helping them realize that you just can't look at point of sale data. That doesn't tell you the whole pictures. What you have to look at is the homogeneous unit level data of all your franchises so you can make informed business decisions and coach your franchise owners to perform. Because, one of the things at Qvinci we found that was that most franchise owners don't understand traditional financials, can't manage to a P&L. Okay, they're HVAC people, they're plumbers, they're fry, they're cooks and things like that. Well, at Qvinci, we have this thing called green is good, red we got to talk, and all of our business intelligence is designed for that paradigm. So when you sit down with me as one of your franchise owners and look at a KPI scorecard, for example, focus on the red, forget the rest. Focus on what matters and get people to think about the 5 red things that month that they need to work on. Why is their cost of goods sold up trending down 20%, or in this case, trending up to 20%? Why is their dental supplies 20% higher than last quarter? Let them focus on the real things that drive profitability and not the big picture with so much data that they get lost and they just go back to doing their work.
I love the mission. Brad, one of the issues, I mean, we represent franchisors and we have some startup emerging brands and especially if they come from they work to another group. A lot of times, one of the most basic levels is they're not even reviewing the P&Ls on a consistent basis, right? Or they're receiving them, but it's a passive process. And what I like about Qvinci and your focus is like, you're like Charles, beyond a P&L. That may not be helpful for franchisees as they're operating their business. It's not that, red, green light system of dashboard and information. And I think you broke down Qvinci when we were speaking, which is getting data, coaching tools, and then brand compliance. And if we could talk about those 3 elements, number one, where you see franchisors go wrong. And right, we're not selling anything here, but at least Qvinci's solution to help franchisors overcome those hurdles. So like just even starting with data collection, what are you seeing in the marketplace?
Well, the 3 pillars that we talked about before, data, coaching tools, brand compliance, and expansion. We did about a 6-month survey. We spent six figures on it. And we interviewed right around just under 1,000 franchisors. And from that survey, we came that we developed these three pillars. We didn't make them up. This is what the market is telling us that they're important to it. Number one, the foundational pillar is the data. The collection, the consolidation, and the mapping of that data to a standard chart of accounts to create homogeneous data so you can then go and do coaching for performance tools, pillar two, and brand compliance and expansion tools, pillar three. And the three pillars are what makes what we call the next generation of franchise financial performance. I think we're in the beginning of franchises really getting sophisticated with their finances. When I got to Qvinci, it was the back of a napkin, a PDF, people submitting their financials to the franchisor, and nobody had a clue. What we're doing now is really getting into the data, unit level economics. If you ask any franchisor, Charles, the number one important thing is unit level economics. And the only way to get unit level economics is the data. And the only way to realistically get the data is an automated process. You cannot do it manually. If you have 5 units, you're going to get tired of doing that. You need to have a tool that does it automatically behind the scenes at night while you're sleeping. So the next morning you push the button and your reports and your business intelligence is there right for you. So you can focus on those things that matter. And one of the big things we talked about before, just a few minutes ago, is that green-red paradigm. We call it the push-pull paradigm. And you want a situation where your franchise owners are motivated to call the business coach. And you also want a situation where your business coaches are motivated to call your franchise owners. Together, those things, what's going to happen? You're going to have great advisory conversations and you're going to solve problems because you meet with the franchise business coach and you focus on the 5 red areas and you schedule a Zoom call for a month later to see how you're doing on it.
Brad, let's dive into that because again, I see, like when we're speaking with our clients, and when certain clients have frustration points about not only franchisees timely paying or whatnot, but also when it comes to item 19 and getting the drill down data, or franchisees not buying from the right suppliers because they're trying to avoid royalties or other items. But getting data, coaching tools, and brand compliance. And I love what you talked about, the push pull. Could you give an example of not with a specific brand, but a specific type of issue of, hey, just point of sale system data or passively receiving P&L would have never shown this. But this is an example where we saw a red flag with this type of data, which prompted these types of conversations with coaching and improving unit economics.
Okay, I have an example. We had a large gym company on Qvinci, still there today. They came to us and said, hey, 5 of our highest performing franchisees went bankrupt last year. Okay, highest performing vis-a-vis point of sale data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what they're not looking at, they're not looking at the whole picture of the franchisee as a going concern, as a business, because those people had too much debt. They were cutting cost here. They were, it just what they're running expenses through there they shouldn't be running through there, and all of a sudden you had a high performing franchisee go out of business. What Qvinci does is look at the entire accounting file, everything that's in the accounting file, the debt, equity, obviously P&L and expenses and balance sheet items. So you can really get a picture. Like our KPI scorecard doesn't just cover cost of buns, cost of mayo, cost of burgers. It covers all cost of goods sold, all operating expenses, all rent, all debt, the whole picture of the franchisee. So the franchisee can be a successful business because anybody who knows anything about businesses what usually kills people are the bad decisions they make outside your basic revenues and expenses, because those are easy to manage. The hard part is managing the whole business. Labor costs get out of whack. Um, things like that. So that was a big one, and we went in there and showed them why they were looking at the wrong thing. I say, no, that's not fair. Not the wrong thing. They were not looking at a big enough picture, because a franchisee is a business. Just like IBM is a business, the franchisee's a business, and they have all these aspects that have to be looked into. And sometimes the franchisees, um, um, you know, they're focusing on what they do best: HVAC, plumbing. We have thousands of plumbers and HVAC people, and home services is one of our verticals. But it's really about looking at the whole picture and getting a whole picture of the franchisee. And you mentioned a minute ago compliance. Here's a couple of examples of the compliance. Let's say in your agreement they have to spend so much on marketing, and these are the approved vendors to use to build out your sandwich shop. Well, we have tools that report automatically. The franchisee doesn't have to submit that. It automatically happens because of our API and the way we link the data. That if you have a report in there and they're not spending enough on marketing, or they're using the wrong vendors, it's going to show up. So, and that's just two examples of compliance. And compliance is a big thing. So, and then brand expansion, which is the other part of the third stool, is you can take the whole picture of that franchisee, use that data for your FDD, but you can also use it to build models to show people um, why it's important to buy more units, or sell more franchise units, or go to find your best franchise owner and convince him to buy 6 or 7 more locations because he's a good operator, as a total picture.
I love those examples, because as you're each example, it's triggering conversations even I've had this week, right? Where say a more startup emerging brand trying to, in a compassionate way, exit a franchisee out of the system who just may not be a good fit. But then, in the conversation comes, they're not performing, but also, look, over the past 6 months they haven't spent what they should have spent on local marketing, right? And so then it becomes very reactive as opposed to an early alert system. And then other situations where, hey, we need to help a franchisee exit. They're high performers, exactly to your point, but they're over leveraged and they're multi-unit operators in another system. And that system's not doing well, so they have financial pressure, right? So we see those things coming on. And a lot of times franchisors, especially on the emerging front, because there's just so many things to be done, it's reactionary. So Brad, it's it's a little scary, right? Because some of, even, as I know, we implement systems into our firm and our automations and other things. If I'm a franchisor, some of my concerns are like, hey, Brad, and we're not getting into pricing, we're not selling this, but I just want mindset wise, which is, this seems overwhelming. Like, this data would be great, but how do I get that local data from the franchisee as to local marketing? How am I pulling this information about their debt financing? Is this something I'm really going to be implementing? How is this manageable for brands?
Well, it's interesting. I'll tell you how I do it. Then I'm going to give you an example of a guy I met at the last Fran camp.
All
Uh,
right, I love
uh,
that, Brad.
that's Charles Nagel, our founder and inventor of Qvinci. That he built this system, so all this data collection, consolidation, and account mapping happens
Okay.
in the background. Okay, and it's simple. Our customer success team, we do all the heavy lifting. Okay, we link and sync all of the underlying data during the onboarding process. Once you link it, it only becomes unlinked if someone unlinks it. All right. The second thing we do is we do what's called whitelisting. We build a whitelist, okay, and then we map your data initially, build a whitelist, and then we use AI and machine learning So when new things come in, it automatically attributes it to the right account. I'll give you an example. Some people call it rent. Some people call it lease. Some people, okay. Well, our system figures it out and categorizes it in the right area. Okay, so this is all done by, you know, it's interesting because, normally a software implementations, people get really scared. Okay,
Hmm.
software implementations may be a 40. Qvinci's a 2. Okay,
Okay.
it's very simple because we do it all for you. We do not let our franchises out the gate until everything's done. And I'm the guy that pushes that, because I don't think it's fair for me to charge you money unless I have a system that's working, and we have account managers, and we have all kinds of things to help you keep everything running. But it's designed. Our system is designed to run pretty much on its own, unless either the account manager or the admin makes a mistake and messes something up, and then red flags go off, and we fix it. Usually, fix it before the next day.
So in a night, so when you're pulling data, is the point you're connecting? So for example, my franchisees are using QuickBooks. This is interacting with QuickBooks, pulling the data, and then beyond, and then you're creating your KPIs and everything else.
Right. And we pull QuickBooks, Zero, Excel, and we're getting ready to start pulling. We're building out a accounting system agnostic engine, and we're well into building that. That's going to come out probably next year. But it's not going to matter where the data comes from.
Okay.
Financial, non-fi, we're going to be able to hook it up for you, and then it's really going to get. We're going to go to the next level on reporting. And just to, I was sitting next to a gentleman at the Miami Fran Camp, and he was lamenting the fact that he hired a competitor of ours. I won't go over the name, and he said they're 9 months into the implementation. They haven't done it yet. And I said, "How many units you got?" He goes, 77. And I looked at him and said, "Listen, you give me a shot. If I don't get it done in 2 days, I'll give you money back." This is simple stuff. We've done the most we've ever done was 175 a franchise business on a Thursday afternoon. Now that's pretty quick. We normally don't do it that way, but that quick. But we had to get this one done, and we had great cooperation from the franchisor and the franchisees. Normally, it's about a 30-day process to get everybody onboarded and trained, and not to do it in a hurry. But when clients come to us, we had a client last month said, "Hey, I got a board meetings come up, and I got to get all this data in so we can start running reports." Well, we did it under a week. So the point is, and that person is a client of Qvinci now because we did it, and we met him at Fran Camp. But the point all is we take the implementation of the software and the handoff to the customer as a solemn vow that we're going to give you the system that works.
Brad, yeah, no, look, whenever I see you, or bump into you, you're always smiling and helping. And I love that. That's why I love we're doing this. Brett, let's go into let's have a best practices discussion for everyone who's watching our video, sort of like a mini course, or at least your thoughts on best practices. Whatever preference you have, let's assume I'm a retail brick and mortar based franchise system or service based, whatever direction you want to go in, or maybe it doesn't matter. Um, Give me, I'll say example one is I'm an emerging franchisor. I just hit royalty sufficiency, or maybe I'm more advanced. And right now, my systems are, we'll get P&Ls, we'll try to coach them on it. We have, issues with collecting data from franchisees. It's sort of reactionary. If you were starting from scratch, what would you recommend as best practices? Like, software systems for franchisees, whether it's a brand name or not, processes to put in place. What's your general recommendations of, you need to be more proactive about it, developing KPIs and all these other things?
Well, what we tell people is, in the beginning, let's keep it simple, let's keep it understandable. And one of the mantras of Qvinci is financial insights everyone can understand. And ties in with the red-green paradigm. Keep it simple, keep it manageable. Like what we do with every franchise brand that we bring on board, and we do this with all verticals, is the first thing we do is sit down with you, the franchisor, and define your pain. What's your number one pain, number two, number three, number four? So we know we hit those. And then we say, okay, listen, we can customize any tool you want. Okay, but we're going to recommend that you take the KPI scorecard, the performance dashboard, break even analysis, cash flow and financial forecaster, and a few other basic tools. And let's start with those simple tools. And let's start us training your business coaches who will then train your franchise owners. And then don't try to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which we see this all the time. We're dealing with a very large franchise brand right now, and we're 6 months into defining a complicated scenario that I'm not even sure most of their franchise owners will get most of it. And I keep going back to them and say, guys, let's keep this simple. Let's keep this simple. And we build. You can, but if you overdo it in the beginning, you overwhelm small business owners. I mean, we're not dealing with Wall Street financiers. We're dealing with small business owners. And they're the ones, they're your real stakeholders here. The finance guys and the franchisor, they understand the data, but that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to coach your franchise owners for performance, pillar 2, and you're trying to keep your franchise owners in compliance and sell more franchise. So if they don't understand what you're doing, it's not going to have the intended effect. So what we try to do is we try to have a meeting where we have you define the pain. What is your biggest pain point? And you know what the number one pain point is for everyone? The data.
Well, explain that more. Go a little deeper into that.
Okay,
is it data collection or?
It's the collection, consolidation, and mapping of the data. It's having homogeneous data because there's a lot of people in the marketplace right now, Charles, and they're telling everybody, oh yeah, we consolidate, we do all that stuff, but most everyone out there is a manual process. And once you get past 5 or 10 units, manual process. What I mean a manual process is basically grabbing the data and throwing it all into a spreadsheet and then sitting there for days on end, making sure the data is correct. You don't have to do that with Qvinci. Qvinci does it. That's where our patents are. That's where our program. I think we got 3 million lines of code in the Qvinci program that does this. I mean, and it uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to make those decisions about what gets mapped everywhere. And we map it to an audible penny. And we know that because we have all kinds of testing modules in there that will throw up red flags if your balance sheets don't meet, your numbers don't match, and they always do. So I think that it can't be overstated that how much the data matters. And I know it sounds simplistic, but the franchisors who get it. And the
It
ones
does.
that
I mean,
don't,
it doesn't sound simplistic. I mean, I see, when especially item 19, and we have discussions, and franchisors are having issues with data points, or even when differentiating rent or lease obligations, CAM charges, and all these other things that come into play.
and the difference, if you have a large franchise and you have enough spreadsheet jockeys, you can figure this stuff out and get it correct for your FDD. Okay, but with Qvinci, you can build a report to give you this data at 3 clicks of a mouse. That's the big difference. I look at Qvinci as, like I said, Oracle for small business.
Right.
We give you some pretty advanced stuff that you can't otherwise go spend the money on.
Brad, so number one pain point, I love your viewpoint on it. It's not only data collection, but having that homogeneous data, right? I think that's brilliant in terms of because just to say data collection by itself is ignoring a big part of that, which is the synthesis of the data, right? So
100%.
and I see it, right? I see that frustration. I mean, we're legal, so it's not something we could help with, but I do see that frustration. And I'll see the ancillary conversations where during calls, clients are like, yeah, we need to do a better job at getting the data and mining the data. So biggest pain point, the homogeneous data, collecting it and synthesizing it. You mentioned KPI scorecards. What, beyond the most obvious, right, of gross sales and royalties, what are some of the important KPI metrics that you see, or maybe even the ones that are surprisingly helpful to franchisors that never thought about the KPIs?
It's gross profit, net profit, top 10 expenses. In that KPI scorecard, you have the KPI scorecard, which is metrics across your chart of accounts. So it includes income analysis, COGS analysis, expense analysis, overhead analysis, things like that. And then you can drill deeper into the data from that. That's the interesting thing about the KPI scorecard. You open it up, you look at it, it's got all these different metrics. And these metrics are we have a template, but you can define them yourself. That's the other differentiator of Qvinci. We are entirely customizable, you know, and so it allows you as a HVAC brand or a snowball brand or a tugboat brand to define your own KPIs that are important to you. And different things are important to different franchise brands. And KPI, when I say a KPI scorecard, we have several of them. We have about 280 different templates in our library that people can choose from, use them as is, or customize them to their liking. We had one of the oil change franchises. I mean, we built them a very highly customizable package that they delivered to each franchisee, 38 pages with graphs and charts and all kinds of things. They designed it, we built it. Now it's in Qvinci, and every month, hydrate, send, hydrate, send, hydrate, send, and it all boils down to building using that homogeneous data to build financial insights that everyone can understand and act on. And that's a big thing right there. When you have something that HVAC or that plumber guy, he understands, but he also has action points. Next month, Charles, I want you to focus on why your O-ring costs have tripled. That's all I want you to focus on. Okay, and there may be more than that. I'm just giving you a simple example, but it's that type of simplicity we're trying to break down because when I first got into the franchise space, the number one thing I heard, I don't hear this as much anymore, is how do you get franchisees to buy into this? Because when I got into this business in 2012, there was a lot of that big brother butting of the heads between the franchisee and the franchisor. And what we try to do, and we think this is important, is to create that collaborative relationship. Remember, I talked about the push-pull paradigm. Is to create a tools so we create some goodies or candy for the franchisee. This is not just a franchisor tool. This is a franchisee tool. They should get benefit from this because they don't get benefit, they're not going to participate. They're not going to collaborate. And that's our goal as a company is to create tools for both the franchisee and the franchisor. Because if you don't, you're always going to have problems. And we still have franchises today that butt heads with their franchisees. We also have numerous examples of franchisors that used to butt head with their franchisees that are running smoothly. And one of them is one of the largest home services in the country, and and they use a Qvinci throughout the whole entire franchise, and that's over 5,000 locations. So I think though that the way I just explained it with the data And with the coaching tools and with the brand compliance, it's kind of a package, and um, I think we have about 45,000 locations linking on Qvinci every night. So,
Well, and Brad, I think the an important takeaway here is, and I see it because right, you go from a franchisor and franchisee not being in sync, right? They're not rowing in the same direction. You go from, hey, franchisee, have you reported your data? Give us your P&L, give us your local marketing spend, but it's fractured, right? It's data for the sake of data as opposed to, hey, we're on the same mission, unit level economics. Let's increase your sales. Let's
yeah,
make you profitable. Hopefully you buy more locations, we grow, right? And I think where franchisors do struggle, or certainly the emerging brands, is how do I, number one, to your point, data collection, synthesize that data for sure, but also then let's create that KPI dashboard. Because when we do communicate with them, it's not us overseeing the franchisee, it's us partnering with them. Hey, COGS are going up, labor is going up, or some other metric is out of sync. And to me, it's really leveraging the value of a franchise system, right? The comparative data between franchisees, the early alerts as to KPIs, and so for me, it's going to a very proactive planned system versus a reactive system, and to me, that's 100% genuine, and probably one of the most foundational items I see for especially emerging franchise brands. You had a conversation with a client and they're at royalty sufficiency and good number of units and they now entering a different sales phase. It's like, well, brokers and consultants recommended we raise our initial franchise fee. And for me, it's not whether that's right or wrong, although in that case I thought it really doesn't align because that initial fee also indicates a expectation and but I said to him, if we're focused on value, I'd rather have aligned franchisees come in at the right franchise fee and focus on their unit economics. The point being, the whole future of their franchise system is, 5 years from now, tell me what your royalties are, your royalty revenue, right? Tell me what your franchisee validation is and multi-unit operators. So I mean, to me, focusing on the performance analysis and the coaching, that gets difficult. Like franchisors try to do it, and then it becomes a situation where some franchisors feel like, hey, it's not my fault. They're just not giving me the data. And that may be true, but you can't risk your whole franchise system to that.
that's true. And we solve that problem because they don't have to give you anything. We link
Right.
and sync the data during the onboarding process, and that data is refreshed every night on QuickBooks Online. And every time they open up the QuickBooks on a hosted system or a system at your house, and if you haven't opened up the QuickBook file, the data hadn't changed.
Right.
So, and what I cannot stress this enough. It's all about the data. If you don't have the data, I'll give you an example. Recently, we had a customer in the franchise space about a year ago um, said, "Listen, I think we're going to do this on our own." I said, "Listen, okay, I think 50 units." I said, "Listen, I don't think you're going to be able to do this. So, you know what I'm going to do for you for free? I'm going to let you keep all your units linked and synced on Qvinci for 3 months, okay? And you go out there and see if you can do it on your own." And he was honest enough to come back, and he said he's back on. He goes, "There's no way you can do this." Now you'll see data, and it may look good, but he was able to compare the data from Qvinci and compare the data that his accountant was putting for him, and he said sometimes I was as much as 40% off because without the mapping to a standard chart of accounts, it's just a bunch of ones and zeros and twos and sixes and numbers. You have no way to know whether or not the data you're giving your franchise owner is correct data. And I maintain is if you're not sure the data is correct, you're better off giving them no data than bad data.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value. Yeah, no, there's a lot of value to the process of planning the KPIs out and the data points. Brad, on as to KPIs, I mean, aside from the obvious, have you run into situations where franchisors have introduced unique KPIs that either you didn't think about or you think other franchisors would find interesting?
Um, we have a lot of customization. Okay,
Okay.
our KPIs cover 90% of what is known out there in the financial world. Um, because what's unique about Qvinci is every dashboard we build is vertical specific by the virtue of the fact that we're using the chart of accounts for that vertical.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're an HVA, we're using HVA. If you're a sorority or fraternity, we're using your chart of accounts. So all of our KPIs or industry specific by that nature. And so, but we do have at the bottom of our KPI scorecard, we have 4 or 5 lines that you can put customizable KPIs that are specific for you. And we do have companies like the one I just mentioned, the oil change place, where they wanted a complete set of KPIs that they designed that took a lot of non-fi data, and we built it for them. So that's why we say we're usable at the KPIs we have and the scorecards and all the different BI tools we have are enough for most brands, especially to get you off. We just came out with a new tool, Charles, and it's basically at risk versus high performers. It's one tool. It's completely interactive, and you can have one picture on your screen of all your high performers and all your at risk entities based upon the criteria you define. Okay, in one chart. So it's a dashboard that can be downloaded to a PDF, included in a board deck. It can be used for both the franchisor and the franchisee, because you can anonymize the data. And let's say you're talking to one franchisee, and you can see, hey, you're in the bottom 10% here. There's no names on it, and the numbers are all anonymized. But we found that it is huge for franchises to be able to show one franchisor where they rank with other franchises. They're not just overall ranking on every aspect of the chart of accounts that's important. Total revenues, gross revenues, net revenues, all that stuff.
I think that's a game changer. Even when I look at it from a legal perspective, and where we're focused on, we'll see issues of franchisee relationships, and to me, if there's consistent data where franchisees are benchmarking, I feel like there's more stability in the franchise system. The franchisees have more respect for the relationship and take more ownership of not performing or hitting certain goals. So, I mean, I think these are incredible. It's like everything else, Brad. It's like these are all things we all know, right? But sometimes you need to hear things like 10 times before you implement. And then when you try to implement, it's how do you do it? As we're having the conversation, I'm even thinking about my firm. I'm like, we have great financial controls and great data points, but as we're speaking, I'm thinking about why aren't I pulling KPI data on the financials? We do it on the client services, but no, this is I've been looking forward to this conversation because this is such an important pain point or a negative pain point that I see so often. And a lot of times people don't know how to solve it, right? And a lot of emerging franchisors, they're busy. They're overwhelmed with what's going on, right?
And
So
one of the things we're working on right now, and I think we'll have it released this summer, is service packages. Give you a couple examples. Let's say you want to serve. You worry you don't have enough people to manage the mapping and the whitelist and keeping all that stuff up and running. Well, we'll do it for you. Let's say you don't think you have enough people to build your coaching for performance tools and distribute that. We'll do that for you. We're going to help people on those big pain points, which is they think and we have a software implementation services bundle where if there's any pain point that you need help on, we will do it. We will do it. Most, most people, um, some people, some franchisors are very good at policing their chart of accounts. Okay, some are not. That's where the beauty of Qvinci comes in. Whenever someone makes a change to a chart of accounts, it sticks out like a sore thumb in your next report. Okay, it'll have a line: unmapped items. Okay, that's if our whitelist didn't catch it and automatically slot it in, which happens most of the time. But every now and then you run a report and it's unmapped items, and you just go back and you see those 7 things that are unmapped, and you either map them or you fix it. It takes a couple of minutes. It's not something that happens often, but it does happen. I mean, human beings are human beings. People change things. They flip a switch on a piece of software they shouldn't flip. But our customer success team and all of our tier 2 and tier 3 customers, they all have dedicated account managers. So we watch this stuff carefully because it's the one thing that differentiates us from everybody else. It's the data.
Well, and I never thought of it this way, but those chart of accounts are critical. I mean, it's the whole foundation to financial reporting. Brett, on that front, if I had to ask, what's like the biggest mistake franchisors are making with the chart of accounts? Is it that they don't have enough detailed breakdown or categories, or what do you typically see there?
Um, uh, um, no, the biggest mistake we see is not establishing a good standard chart of accounts, because we don't change the underlying chart of accounts in each franchise books. That's their accounting records. They can have whatever native chart of accounts they want. What Qvinci Software does is we define a standard, then we pull all the data from all these native charts of accounts and we standardize everything. That's the mapping process. Okay, that's where the AI and the machine learning comes in. So you as a franchisee are not having Big Brother come mess with your books. Your books are your books. You can add
Right.
any account you want. But when it comes into Qvinci, we map it and give the franchisor and the franchisee inside Qvinci mapped data to a standard chart of accounts.
Yeah.
And that's what
Brett,
a lot of people don't understand is they think, oh, you can't change the chart of accounts of the franchise. We don't do that. They can do whatever they want.
no, and that's what I was almost assuming before we started our conversation, right? I didn't
Yeah,
fully understand that.
yeah.
Brad, I like the goal is these videos being productive and helpful. And I've been looking forward to this conversation, Brad. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate Qvinci. I know our client feedback has been amazing on the relationship, and I appreciate you supporting our events. But most important, Brad, I appreciate a genuine conversation today. And I think it was really helpful.
Well, thank you very much. Anytime. I mean, as you can tell, I'm no
Yes.
short of talking, and I'm very passionate about Qvinci, and I can talk forever about it. I think we're just on the cusp, Charles, of really educating franchises to becoming much more sophisticated in their. Like I think I said this earlier. We're Oracle for small business. We are going to upgrade the financial literacy and financial interpretation and action based upon that, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, no, Brad, I'm motivated by the conversation because I've seen the frustration and it's unlocking a ton of value. Brad, I appreciate the time today. Look
Thank you
forward to
very much.
meeting up again, Brad.
We'll see you in Miami.
Yeah.
Thank you.